the lights on.
Hello everybody, it's the infant feeding team. It's Thursday, we're at the John Radcliffe Hospital and this is questions and answers with the infant feeding team for about an hour. This is our year anniversary.
Yeah.
Last year, we did our first session doing the questions and answers. So we have done probably nearly every week. We've probably missed a couple out over the year, and we've had very, very many people watching and joining in, and we've been really grateful for that. So happy birthday to us all, and all those fantastic breastfeeding stories that we've had in that last year, which is amazing. So same things as every week. We say this session is for anything to do with feeding, bottle feeding, breastfeeding, weaning, tandem feeding, feeding beyond one, whatever it is. We are here to support you if you've got any burning questions.
Yeah, anything to do with early days, really.
Yeah, absolutely. And hopefully we can answer your questions, and if we can't, we'll direct you to the right person. Please don't ask us about the policies for the hospital visiting or scams or anything else, although it is amazing. We had our first 2 men in clinic today.
Yay!
Which was lovely for them to accompany their partners after such a long time not having any contact with them. So it was lovely to welcome men back to support the mums or partners in to support mums in clinic today.
That's 13 months, wasn't it, since we last had a partner in clinic?
Since we've had partners in clinic, so it's been really lovely. So yes, get your questions firing up. We can see there's people watching already, although it is a lovely day today, so I don't know whether you'll all be wanting to listen in while we're live, but this is a session that you can watch at any point, and then it goes onto YouTube, OMVP, Oxford Maternity Voices Partnership YouTube channel, so you can see all of the ones that we've done over the last year, which is amazing. That's about 50 hours worth of watching when you're breastfeeding at night. So
like that's what they want to do.
Yeah. With everything else. So you know, we've had lots of fun, and we're going to continue with the service, just talking through things with you as you're worried about anything at all. So today we thought we would talk, because we've got partners coming into clinic, we thought, well, let's talk about what partners can do, because that's, you know, something that often gets neglected. But what does your partner do? How does your partner help you? Because they often say, well, my partner wants to give a bottle to the baby to help me feed, you know, to help me with feeding, and just think that I can have a bit more sleep if he does the feed, and or she does the feed, you know, the person in your bubble. So we just thought about all the things that they can do other than give babies a feed, because there are many, many things that a partner can do rather than feed the baby. And you know, your role, if you're breastfeeding, is to feed your baby. That's you know, that's what you do, and your baby is with you for a lot of the time. And I do think that you worry about your partner being left out, but also I think your partner feels that they're not involved, and they're quite keen to give bottles. And actually babies don't necessarily need bottles in the early days.
I'd say that's some partners, not all partners. Some partners are very happy to let their other half do the feeds.
A lot are very deaf after about 2 weeks at night, aren't they?
Support them in other ways, which is what this is about.
And it's what it's about, exactly. So what can they do? So they can cuddle a baby after a feed and change its nappy. That's a really obvious thing, isn't it? They can take the baby for a walk, so you can get a bit of a sleep sometimes. If you know, if you're really tired and you want to catch up with a bit of sleep, and you're worried about closing your eyes when your baby's in the house and can't rest, if they take the baby around the block, particularly when it's nice, they can have a sling, and they can take the baby in a sling for a walk, or in the pushchair pram. Give you a bit of time out, and you know, you can do the same for them. You can go for a walk, and they can get to sleep on their days off as well. But you know, when they go back to work, they feel a bit, I think they have quite a hard time when partners go back to work, because you're off work, and you know, it's a hard job being a mum, feeding babies and doing all the things. It takes all day to do that, and you very rarely get out and do anything else. But you're not at work, and you're not getting out of bed, and you're not getting dressed straight away in the mornings, and they're getting up at 7 o'clock or 6 o'clock and going off to work, and you know, I think they do feel a bit left out. So there's lots of things that they can do to support you in that way. Make you cups of tea. They can perhaps bring you breakfast up, leave it by your bed so that you can have breakfast in bed, a cup of tea, and you know, they can also cook supper if you're struggling in the evenings with lots and lots of cluster feeds, they can do housework, they go shopping. Anything else, Alex?
I think just be your support, really.
Yeah.
I think that the most supportive it can, they can be is just being there for you. And
They can fend off calls, can't they?
Yeah.
Phone calls as well,
Yeah.
which you get a lot of.
I had my third child in Holland, and the system in Holland was you hung a thing on a little sign outside your door that said "Mother and baby resting in the afternoon." So that's what a partner can do as well. Not that we have so much at the moment, but it might be telephone calls, is answering your phone, so you do get some sleep. I think it's really hard for women to sleep in the day, but actually it's really important as well. So it's being your sort of your guardian, really. That's the role of your partner.
Yeah, he's protecting you from everything else going on around you, and just making sure that everything's in place. And I know certainly in the early days you're running out of this and you're running out of that, and they have to go to the chemist and ask for skin to skin. It's absolutely fine if they do skin to skin as well. And the baby will settle. It's where it expects to be. It wants to feel that warmth of the skin. It wants to feel the heartbeat and the rhythm of the breathing, and that is great for a partner to do as well. So it's time out together, and you can all sit in bed and rest together. Not sleep with your baby necessarily, but he can have the baby skin to skin while you're sleeping. But make sure that you have time out where you all get time to sort of regroup and catch up on your sleep. It's really important that you can do that. You can't do day and night duty, which is what happens when you have a baby. You're awake all day and all night feeding baby, and if you're not used to sleeping in the daytime, it's very hard for you to switch off. You will end up really, really exhausted and burnt out if you don't teach yourself to go to sleep in the day. So make sure that you strip off. You take your clothes off, you shut your curtains, you switch your phone off, and you get into bed properly and have a sleep properly in bed, because then you will go to sleep if you try. It is much easier if you get yourself into bed, because you will be exhausted.
I'm going to move the camera a bit because we've put it on a book today, and the book is really obvious, so bear with me. Right up here.
It's organising us.
Yeah, well I can see
now.
My computer's finally decided to load, and it's been taking ages, and actually I can see the book. It's a baby book. It's one of our books off the shelves here in our office, but they didn't really need to see the book in front of them. It was a bit in the way. But I see the other thing you were saying about the partners is the baby is used to the partner's voice, and actually that's really soothing. So we're talking about having the partner caring for the baby and you maybe having a rest, or even just making it out the door, and God forbid you might have a haircut. If you're lucky, if you've been one of those lucky people. But actually your baby will be used to your partner. They will be used to their voice, and their voice will be really important to them. It will be soothing and calming, because it's something they recognise from before they were born, because they've been listening to you two chatting over the months that they've been inside, the baby was inside you. So that closeness and comfort of skin to skin, or even just a cuddle, and your partner's voice will be crucial and really, really beneficial. So
grows baby's brains, doesn't it?
It does.
Grows
Any
baby's
contact
brain.
with baby
Skin to
grows
skin and
baby's brain.
soothing and doing all of those things, whoever, in that bubble. So minimise the number of people that handle your baby in the early days. So it might be yourselves plus somebody else. So it might be that you've got a parent living nearby and they're in your bubble at the moment, or they're helping you look after the baby. But minimise the number of people that handle your baby, because they want to transfer your bacteria only onto them and get your bacteria to protect them from other bacteria. So if lots of people are handling your baby and you're not having much contact with them, your baby's going to get their bacteria and not yours, and you want your baby to colonise with your bacteria. So minimal handling other than yourselves, and minimal people feeding your baby. Then they identify with the person that feeds them, and that's really important. How are we doing for questions? Have we got any
we haven't got
questions
any,
this
so
morning?
I'm wondering what all these people who I can see their faces at the top are thinking, whether they've got any questions for us this week. So,
we've been a bit less busy this week in the hospital, which has been nice, but we are still having mums coming in with big weight losses. So, we talked a lot last week about recognising whether your baby's had enough milk, and we're still having mums coming back in with babies that aren't getting enough milk and aren't doing enough pumping, and not understanding that they've got to pump 8 times in 24 hours to stimulate their breasts, and that's every single day that you're pumping. It's not just one day or pump once and you think you've got enough, it means that you've got to pump 8 times in 24 hours, not every 3 hours, but 8 times in 24 hours to keep your prolactin levels high, and you get little bits of milk to give back to your baby as well then if you need to. But it's just making sure that you recognise when your baby's getting enough milk, and are you able to things are falling off the back, frighten us to death. Recognising that your baby's getting enough milk transferred through, so is it feeding well, or is it not suckling well at the breast, and is it peeing and pooing? And those are the 3 things that we really worry about when that comes around. So hopefully with more sessions like this, and you've got access to support, and partners are coming in now onto the ward to visit for up to 3 hours, you can get a little bit more support while you're in hospital as well, and not feel quite so stressed about not seeing anybody and wanting to go home too early.
I think the benefit of having the partners on is that they hear it too. And just to say that we are running sessions on the wards, it's only about 15-20 minutes max, teaching sessions on the wards, and we've been running them off and on through the last few months. And just to say, if they are running and it's during visiting time, it's well worth partners listening into. If you happen to be, and any of you out there that are having a baby and haven't yet had your baby, and you come in and there's the offer of one of these talks, because we do them in the bays and in the side rooms during visiting time, it is well worth it, because it will set you up in order to know that your baby's getting enough milk, what to expect, and how to prevent you in coming back. When it was just the mums on the wards, we found mums were very, very happy to listen in, and there was no problem with that. We found that mums now with the partners on the wards as well are slightly less inclined to do it. I know that time, that 3 hours, is really precious, but it is only 15 or 20 minutes, and it really will make a difference. It can make the difference between you staying at home and getting off to a good start, or needing to come back in because of a postnatal readmission, because maybe you've not picked up, your baby hasn't had quite enough milk. So if you are in and your partner's with you and they talk to you about doing a talk on the wards, please do join in, because it really is valuable, very valuable.
And the other thing is that we've now got up and running our YouTube videos, which aren't spectacularly Oscar winning, but it shows us talking about all of the things that we talk about in the teaching sessions. And you can look on our website. So if you go into the John Radcliffe Hospital website, then onto Women's Services, click on maternity. So you click on M and it comes up with maternity, and then click on infant feeding or breastfeeding. You can choose, and it will redirect you to infant feeding. And then click onto resources on that page. You'll find that you can get a link to our YouTube videos, and you can see all of those things recorded, and it talks about all of the things that we talk about every week on here as well, to help support your baby, relationship building, how to use a pump, how to responsibly give your baby a bottle, so paced feeding, so that you don't overfeed your baby and your baby's more comfortable, skin to skin, and we had a lovely mum doing some fantastic hand expressing, so there's hand expressing as well, so you can see that. So if you're looking at it when you're pregnant, you might want to look at that to see about collecting some breast milk, some colostrum before you have your baby, and that will show you how to do that as well. So do have a look at those resources and see if they're of any use to you, and it may answer some questions that you've got, particularly if your baby's not gaining enough weight and you're not sure. It may prompt you to ring your midwife if you're worried about anything. She's the first go-to at any point in your pregnancy or your postnatal time, up to the time that you're discharged, and then after that it's the health visitor. But if you're worrying about your baby's breastfeeding or your baby's feeding at all, go to your health visitor first. The local services are in support as well, and that's the Oxford Breastfeeding Support and La Leche League, and also the Abingdon Baby Cafe. They're providing really, really fantastic support, but still only online. So,
but it's amazing what you can do online.
Yeah,
you can do a lot of support. We do some here too. I've had the odd call, and we've switched over to a video call, and I've been able to watch a baby feeding or talk a mother through pumping, and it makes a big difference not to be just on the telephone. So where we can, we will do that. It's not always feasible. Depends on whether we've got a laptop free, because we can't do it on our main computers. But it is something that we do. We have actually got a couple of comments. One's a comment and one's a question. So Alexandra, a similar name to me, says, hi ladies, any advice for FTM? What does FTM stand for? How to prepare for breastfeeding at the end of pregnancy? For the moment, I don't know. I was thinking, what does FTM stand for?
You'll have to enlighten us, I'm not sure.
Yeah, FTM, not sure. So, but it's any advice for how to prepare for breastfeeding at the end of pregnancy. We don't really need to do anything, to be honest. Just have a positive attitude. The best thing you can do is have a positive attitude. If you can go into it thinking I'm going to breastfeed rather than I'm going to try, which is what we hear mums saying. You've carried a baby for nearly 9 months, your body has done that. There's no reason why your body won't then feed your baby. And many mums have a few problems in the beginning. The baby's got to learn. There's 2 of you doing it. We talk about dance partners, so there's not just one. Baby has to do their part, you have to do your part, and get it right. So it takes a bit of time. It's a learned skill. So read up, go and watch our videos. Go and have a look at the videos where we talk about positioning and attachment. We talk about hand expressing. Knowing how to hand express before you have your baby is a really good skill, but you don't have to collect it unless there's a risk factor. So just having that skill is beneficial. And just having belief in yourself that it will work, I think is the biggest thing. So,
and I think also global media videos. So really
they're
good.
fabulous. Yeah.
Look online at global media videos.
First time mum. Thank you. She's come back up. Oh, first time mum.
You can't make it up, can you?
Thank you, Alexandra.
We've got far too many abbreviations already in our job, so we don't use, obviously we're a bit old and we don't use forums like you do.
I can hear my children. It's when I got an NGL from my son. And I was like, NGL? Not going to lie. Okay, fine. Got to know.
We're too old. Sorry about that.
I'll know that for the next time. Thank you for educating me. So, yeah. So I think that's really, confidence in your own abilities. Why will your body let you down? It shouldn't. And just do a little bit of reading around and watch some of our videos. Yeah. So, as we say, they're not the best.
You can't prepare enough. You can't prepare enough. It's like anything, you get what you put in, and it's like when you revise for exams when you have a baby. If you don't do any revision, you don't pass the exam that well. You've got to prepare. You've got to do some reading. It's just helps you.
I think
makes it a lot easier and less stressful.
Yeah, when antenatal classes first came about, the NCT was part of the organisation that brought it about. They realised there was a chap called Dick Grantly-Reid, wasn't it? Dick
Grantly-Reid.
Anyway, this chap who wrote a book about childbirth without fear, because women weren't told anything about what was going on with their bodies when they were in labour. And at one point, actually, women were more or less sort of drugged, and then the baby was born, and they came around a bit afterwards, which, okay, some people might like, but actually that doesn't help you bond with your baby. And if you know what's going on, and this is a big part of doing antenatal classes when we can get them or getting the information, when you know what's going on, there isn't the same fear. And the more that you know about the normal mechanisms of breastfeeding or the normal mechanisms of birth, and that you know that these things are meant to happen, that actually babies do take a bit of time to learn how to breastfeed, actually it's much better to be ready in that respect. So having, being positive about it, knowing that it will happen, but it may take a bit of time, will make all the difference for those FTMs.
And if you've done hypnobirthing, that's what Grantly-Reid did. He is the primary hypnobirther in the 1920s, so it's not new.
No. Amy's come on and said, not a question, just a huge thank you for all these helpful tips over the past few months. Still breastfeeding, and my little boy will be 7 months old on Sunday. One happy boy. One happy mum, I think. That's fantastic. Well done, Amy.
2 happy midwives.
Yeah, exactly. 2 very happy midwives. Very pleased.
Lovely to hear that.
Alicia said, are you able to talk about or demonstrate some different breastfeeding positions, please? Oh, I think you're quite happy to do that, aren't you, Naomi?
Do that, yeah. Volunteered by my colleague. Oh, I've got a baby.
Yeah. So it's quite interesting. If you ever come to see us in breastfeeding clinic, we will try numerous different positions You know, because actually sometimes it will work in one and it won't in the other, and it's like having different tools in your toolbox. So it's really beneficial to be able to do more than one per position. Shall I turn the camera so you can be seen?
I might just go up a bit as well. I can go up a bit, then you can see me, can't you? Can you see me now? You can see me now. Beautifully. Oh,
no, they can't if I tip the phone over.
No, you have to go forward again. So I think there are many different positions, and it basically depends on the angle of your dangle a lot of the time, the way that your breasts are actually lying. And so the first thing you probably need to do when you're breastfeeding is look at, you know, when you have a baby, is look at where your breasts are on your body, and have a look in a mirror and have a really good look at what they look like. So, you know, some women's breasts are up here and their nipples point out that way, some are slightly up. Most mums have got nipples down there somewhere, or slightly to the side like that. That's more normal. So you're wanting to make sure that your baby can fit into that shape. And so if you've got breasts that go like that, it's probably much more difficult to get your baby to go across your tummy and reach that breast as easily. And you might find, I'll come back to that position, that going underarm, if your breast is like that, that the baby is coming onto the breast a bit more easily. So you need to tuck your baby into the contours of your body, so it's tucked really into the contours. And I think what most people do wrong with this position is they put their baby out there somewhere, and it's leading with its nose, so it's like that. And can you see it's out there somewhere? And what you need to do is exactly the same principles if it's across your tummy in the cross cradle hold. It's tucked well into the contours of your body, and its feet are around here, almost by your bra strap actually, so that it's tucked right around your back like that. And you've got your hand across the baby's shoulders and at the base of the baby's neck, so its head is free. Always have a baby's head free. And then you line your baby up nose to nipple. So your baby is not central like that. Not central like that, it's much further round, so that the nose is just tipping the nipple. And we've got some pictures, haven't we, Alex? Do you want to?
Yep.
We've got them. Where's our lovely...
Oh, they're up on the board
pictures?
actually. I can let go of the camera. So
yeah, we haven't got enough of
okay.
those. No.
Let me grab them.
Get our pictures that we show you. So your baby needs to come up with its nose attached to the breast. That's the most important thing when you're doing that. So
nose to
you can
nipple.
see, so it's lined up nose to nipple. So it's much further around your body than you ever would think that you'd go. It looked like your baby's not going to actually get near your breast. And then you rub the nipple down the top lip, and then take the baby up onto the breast so that the chin hits the breast first and its nose is free. And when your baby lifts its head back in that position, it's the same whichever position you're in.
That's why I moved the picture a minute ago, and I know everyone's probably thinking, what is she doing? But actually, let me just get this going the right way. So I would say that picture of that baby is absolutely fantastic. Chin in, that nose is
head back.
Really, yeah, head right back. You can see where the mother's holding. She's holding down at the base of the neck, on the shoulders.
Yeah.
The pressure is on the shoulders, not on the neck, not on not on the head at all.
So you can see that I'm holding the back of the baby's shoulders across here, and the soft pad of my thumb and my palm are supporting the shoulder blades.
That's where she's going to push from.
It's like a bagpipe almost.
Yeah.
You know,
Exactly.
You're pushing it in, and so this bit of my hand is going like that, not like that. So it's going in like that, not across. So you don't want to be taking your baby onto the breast from its head. You don't want to be pushing the baby that way. You want to be going up from your shoulders. So your baby's staying as close as possible, and the nose is attached, is just touching the nipple. Its head goes back, and the nipple goes to the top of the back of the roof of the mouth, and the chin is leading. So when you see your baby on,
chin leading,
there's no space around the breast that you can see. It's asymmetrical, so you've got more areola at the top, and the chin is really close, and your baby's got a double chin almost. It's really close in, and it's got this double chin that you can see against, but you can't see the nipple or the breast around it, and you don't need to go like that to see if it's on. If it feels right, it probably is. Not trying to poke it around and see if you can see if the top lip's out and the bottom lip's out. If it's on properly, it doesn't hurt, and it's probably right. And your baby will start suckling straight away in that lovely deep glugging pattern that we like. So that's the same principle that way. So if your breast is slightly more central, say, and it's slightly turning down, what you need to be doing is then working with that angle of your dangle. So you want to be looking in the same principle. Your baby is tucked close into the contours of your body. I'm going to have a coughing fit. Into the contour of your body. You can support your baby's bottom on your arm, and your hands are on the back of your baby's shoulders in exactly the same way. The nose is touching the nipple, and you're going to take the baby close up, but the difference here is that well, it's not, it's the same actually. You're working with the way that your breast lies. So if your breasts are here, your baby needs to be here. So it needs to be like that. If your breast is down there, your baby does not need to be in the same place. It needs to come down and up onto the breast. And what we find often when we see mums in clinics is that they're trying to put their baby on tummy to mummy, and the nipple's falling out the baby's mouth all the time, and they're told they've got a tongue tie because the baby can't hold the breast in its mouth. Actually, what you're doing is you're trying to stabilise the breast in the baby's mouth by moving it round to work with that angle. So you're taking the baby up onto the breast, and it's holding the breast in its mouth without having to worry about it falling out when it pauses, which is what happens a lot of the time. So that's your cross cradle, and it's exactly the same. And you might find if you've got a really difficult side, so you're really good with this side, you're left-handed say, and you can feed your baby well on that side, but you can't get your baby on this side, take your baby under your arm on the other side and do the same as if you were on this side. So you're just literally moving your baby around, but you're tucking it into the contours of your body, and you're lifting your baby onto the breast in exactly the same way as that. So you're not doing anything different, and you've got it right on this side. You'll probably get it right on that side if you're using the same hands and the same position. So your eye will see the same way, and that will help with your positioning. So those are two really common positions.
What about upright?
Just like to do that. Would you like to do that one?
You can do upright. Great job.
So the other position, really early days, is what we call face planting. So you're sort of lying down and your baby is face down. Now that is quite a strange thing to do. Your baby's tummy button is on your opposite nipple. Baby's hands are on either side of your breast. So this is early days in the first couple of weeks. And your baby's feet are under your armpit almost. So they're really face down, and we call it face planting. And that's sort of the first laid back position really, and that's what your babies might do when they're born. They crawl to the breast and they feed like this, but actually it requires very little skill, and your baby just falls onto the breast and attaches, and that's usually always right, and they get a deeper latch because gravity is keeping them there. So that's a really good skill to do in the early days, or if you're really sore, go back to doing that to see if it improves your latch. The other way that you can do it is one that where you're sitting on your baby's knees, your baby's sitting on your knee, and it's sort of a koala hold. And
goes sideways on.
Goes sideways on, yeah. And so your baby's coming up onto the breast from underneath. So you're holding your baby around its tummy. If you hold it under its arms, its hands go in front of its face, and they often get really in the way. So keep your hands low when you're doing this. You can lean back a little bit, or you can sit up, whichever's comfortable. But your baby's nose is lined up at the nipple, and your baby will bob, which mums find a little bit difficult sometimes. And you know, it's a little bit hard to get used to if your baby's not done this position before. You may well find that your baby's even curled up somewhere down here when you start doing it, because they've never bobbed and held their head up. Their head won't fall off.
And actually it brings out, it is natural breastfeeding behaviour. That bobbing is really natural. That's the baby looking for the breast, being a real active part of the feed.
You know, pummel the breasts with their fists to stimulate the letdown as well. It's sort of a natural feed. It's what all the other mammals do like that. They crawl and they attach like that, and they use their you know, their digits to stimulate milk production and find their way, and they find it through smell as well as the darkness of the areola, which they can see very, very slightly. They haven't got great sight initially. And then your baby will bob, and it will attach onto the breast that way, and that's also a nice way to feed your baby because it's hands-free. You know, if your baby's very sensitive to being pushed onto the breast and you've had lots of help, you might find that there's a bit of breast aversion and they don't like being handled, and this is a really good go-to if your baby's been you know, not feeding as well. It may well prefer this position because it's in control, and it's choosing when to go on and when to come off.
It's also a really good position for babies that have been born by ventouse or forceps delivery, because they actually don't like their heads being handled at all. So,
and then you can bring your hand round, and your baby can just nuzzle into the side like that, and you can feed like that. And actually your shoulders are well supported, make sure you've got something in the small of your back, like a pillow or a cushion or a rolled up coat or something. But then your baby's sitting up, and they tend to burp when they've finished as well, or when they're feeding, and they go to sleep quite well, but they usually always come off, and it's sometimes quite violent when they do. They just go like that, and your glasses fall off your head, and they tend to self remove, and then they just go to sleep. And it does work really beautifully. It's lovely to see.
It's also a really good position for mothers who are feeding two, twins. So you can do one on each side and get very clever about it.
Yeah, when your baby's got the head control that if it's never done, it won't have. It'll be very floppy the first day, but once you've done it for a few feeds, your baby will really become very strong and able to bob and attach very easily, very, very quickly. It's amazing to see them do it so quickly and easily once they've done it a few times. So, all of those positions are right, and it's what's right for you. And some mums like to know that they don't like this position if they're going out. They want to be able to just, discreetly put their babies on like that. So, once your baby's learned to feed, whatever way, you can, adapt. And the other one is you can lie down and feed your baby on the side as well, but more for night time really, because if you go down the lying down route during the day as well, it's really hard sometimes to feed your baby any other way, and you don't often get a chance to go out because you can't feed any other way than lying down. So
lie down in the park.
Don't get caught out on that one too much. If it's the way that you've learned to breastfeed, try and make yourself learn different ways as well, so you're not tied to being able to feed in bed, because some people that's what's happened, and it's quite hard. So try lots of different positions and ask your midwife to show you some when doing it. Have a try yourself, and if you're not quite sure, then get your midwives to show you when you see her, and we can go through those. So have a go and just see. I hope that's answered your question.
So that's for Alicia. So I think the basis of it is what's happening between the baby's mouth and the breast is always the same. It's just you can hold the baby in different places. Charlotte says she's listening to us in the garden with her.
Oh, lucky you!
Alicia, yeah. So,
How would I like to be out there?
Alicia.
Lovely.
Sarah Hartley has said, my baby's 12 weeks has just started fussing from 11 weeks when breastfeeding, pulling on and off, especially on one side, which has made it a bit sore. Do you have any suggestions? I think about what you were saying about making sure that baby's following the contours of your body, and that you're starting nose opposite nipples. That's the one thing you find, the babies get bigger and we don't allow for it. I think I've said this quite a few times, haven't I? But it's thinking about start nose opposite nipple. You might find that you actually haven't allowed for your baby to have grown, so you started with them here, and actually what you've done is this, and what we needed to do was this, bringing them around the body. So that might be one reason.
Have you introduced any bottles recently? Because sometimes that can be the reason why that their flow is slightly different in your breast. Have you just had a period?
That's what I was thinking as well. Yeah.
Do you feel like you might be starting your periods again? Have you gone onto contraception? Sometimes that dips your supply a teeny bit. So, and also at 12 weeks, your baby does have a mega growth spurt, and often will feed all day and all night for about a week, and start waking up at night if it hasn't done that for a bit. It may well start waking up at night again if it's just having a mega growth spurt and stepping up your milk production. And it might be that that's the start of it, that you just need to step up your production. So let us know if any of those things have happened, because that's what it could be, rather than a problem.
Yeah.
It could just be a natural progression of something that's going on.
And it's likely to pass, if it's any of those things, it will probably pass.
You could always do some pumping if you think your supply's dipping a bit. The other thing was, did you do lots of pumping in the early days and then establish breastfeeding later? Did you pump 3 hourly, regimentally, if your baby was in, say, a neonatal unit or something? Because quite often if your baby was in hospital for a while, or you had feeding problems in the early days and you did lots of pumping, it might be that the expressing that you did was very regimented, and it sometimes dips your supply at 12 weeks. So you can overcome that by just doing a little bit more pumping and putting your baby to the breast a bit more frequently, and that might step it up again.
Okay, so hopefully that's helped Sarah. Kerry was the one who came back and told me what FTM stood for, so thank you, Kerry, for educating me.
We'll know now.
Oh, and Alexandra said it as well, so I'm much the wiser now. Wow, Charlotte's saying that her daughter's going to be 1 in 15 days, and I think she's been on this almost every session. You must have been one of our first customers, mustn't you? No. Catherine Berry's having a giggle. I'm not sure what she's giggling about. I don't know if it's one of our positions or something. I've got an LOL.
Making a mash out of it.
Bethany said, hello ladies, thank you for these sessions. I'm a first time mum expecting in June and they have been really helpful. Would you mind going through what happens straight after birth? I've heard you mention babies go through a number of stages. Well remembered, we like that. Before attaching for the first time. Many thanks. Have we got our picture?
Yeah, you have a baby and I'll get the picture up.
Okay.
Here it is.
You
So it's
found
called
it.
the 7 steps.
The nine
steps
yeah.
even, yeah.
Naomi shortcutting it. The 7 steps.
Call it the magical hour.
Yeah.
So your first one that you do, well actually I'm going to get 2 out, so I've got one in front of me and I can hold one up as well. So the first one that you do is the birth cry. You can't probably see these, but I'll come a bit closer. It's called the, and you won't be able to see this, it'll be the wrong way around, but it's the birth cry, and your baby cries very distinctly when it's born, and that's filling its lungs up and taking a big breath. Some babies don't do it, they're very quiet, and they, particularly if you've had delayed cord clamping, they've had lots of oxygen while they're just lying on your tummy, and they're very happy, and they may just transition very carefully, but babies do make a noise when they're first born to fill their lungs up. And then your baby will relax, and they lie still and they just listen to your heartbeat and just say, okay, what's just happened, I'm here now. And then they start to wake up a little bit, and they're aware of the smell of your body, and the smell on their hands, which is amniotic fluid, smells the same as the areola. The Montgomery tubercles, which are the little bumples all around your nipple, release this scent which smells just like amniotic fluid, so they know to go near there. And also it's slightly darker, so they follow that darkness and they go towards the darkness, but mostly they're driven by smell. So they will awake and they'll start to wriggle and look around. So they might just lie there going, well, here I am, but what's going on? And they're just looking around and listening. Then they start to move, and they might move their hands and shoulders, and they might lick their fingers, they might put their thumb in their mouth, and they might pull things around, they might pull, if they're near the breast, pull at the breast, and they just are exploring a little bit. And so then they will rest again, and that might be for a couple of seconds, or it might be for a little while. We can say this might take 56 to 60 minutes, so that's why we call it the golden hour, the magical hour, because it takes about that length of time for them to do it. And then they start to crawl, and they will move, so your baby's slightly lower than your breasts, and they move their feet up. They will actually crawl, then they will do it themselves.
Like commando crawl, isn't it?
It is. It's sort of, just they move with their, their feet together, and they just propel themselves up with their hands, and they slide up the breast. And then they familiarise, so they do start looking around. Their tongue comes out. They start licking their lips. Their eyes go really wide, and they're looking around. And they put their hands in their mouth, and they salivate, and they start to do that, which is something they have to do before they feed. They have to be able to start licking and sticking their tongue out. And if there's no tongue darting before a feed, they're not ready to feed. They won't attach if they're not sort of doing all of those things, salivating and tongue darting and putting their tongue out in order to attach. That's the thing that signs them, any baby, that they will feed. They sort of start using their hands and their mouth. And then they'll attach themselves, and then they'll go to sleep. So what happens then with this position is if you get interrupted, so your baby has to do all of these things. Every baby in the whole world does this. Every mammal, every baby will do this, whatever country you're in, whatever language you speak, whatever continent you're on, they will do this. So they play out this, but if you interrupt your baby, so you take your baby off and you interrupt it to do vitamin K or to weigh your baby, it has to go all the way back to the beginning of that process and start doing it again. So every time you disturb your baby, so you might say, well, can you just hold the baby while I move around or do this? As soon as you take your baby off and put it back on, it has to go back to the beginning and start it again. And it gets quite tiring for the baby. So if you do it repeatedly, it stops trying and it will go to sleep, and then it won't feed. So it's all part of the priming to have the first breastfeed and to make that imprint, to get time to acclimatise to being born, to listen to what's happening, get the skin to skin and the transference of your bacteria and things like that, and to learn how to breastfeed. And that imprint stays with it. So when your baby's had a breastfeed, in that first hour it knows that it can breastfeed again, and it will be there and it'll know what to do, even if it's got problems or it's not very well or it goes to sleep and it doesn't feed very easily for a couple of days. It's got an imprint and it's allowed to do that. So it's really important that you can allow your baby to be undisturbed in that hour, and it can play out those crawling events, you know, and it might do it very quickly. It might go onto the breast and come out and just want to feed, and that's what some babies do, but others are a bit slower. And if you've had an epidural or you've had drugs in labour, your baby will be more sleepy and not able to crawl as easily. So, you know, it needs to have lots of time in order to try and attach the breast, and if your baby won't do that, then you have to do your hand expressing to stimulate your breasts and start the priming of the milk production. But also you can give your baby some colostrum so that you know it's got some energy, it's got some colostrum in to start with, so that you know you don't have to worry about feeding it quite so much in the first 24 hours if it's had a good amount of colostrum in the first hour. So hand expressing if your baby doesn't do it in the first hour, and then you keep hand expressing as well until your baby then feeds. You're protecting your milk supply. But that's the whole thing, isn't it?
So if you go and watch the Global Health Media videos, there's a lovely one. It's breastfeeding in the first hours. It's there. We use it for teaching staff, and it's lovely for you to look at as well. It's a beautiful, beautiful video. There are lots of them, but the one of breastfeeding in the first hours is fabulous because it does show exactly that. Yeah. It follows 3 moms having babies, multinational, and these 3 babies go through the same thing. They're born, they do that wriggle, they do that familiarisation, they have rests, and then they attach. And you see them salivating and licking their hands, just as Naomi's just described. So as we said, it's the world over, babies do the same process. And it's that separation, if your babies are removed from mum, going back to the beginning, makes it less likely that they'll do it before they fall asleep, which is so concerning. So one of the things you could put on your birth plan is uninterrupted skin to skin. So for instance, any OBS, if anyone decides they need to do a set of OBS on your baby, that's your heart rate, temperature and breathing, they can do that when the baby's skin to skin. If you're having vitamin K injection, that can be done skin to skin. If you're being sutured, if you need to have some stitches, that can be done with your baby still skin to skin, as long as someone is careful and keeping an eye on you. So maybe your partner's on duty to make sure that you and your baby are fine and the airways are not obstructed.
It's also good pain relief for you.
Yeah,
if you've got
having
your
your baby on.
Having the oxytocin effect will be endorphins released. So
the one thing we
pain relief.
The one thing we can't do with the baby still on you, skin to skin, playing out this wonderful 9 stages, is the wait. So if it feels like it's a busy delivery suite, you have to be on delivery suite. If it sounds like it's busy, you should have a chat with your midwife and maybe get your baby weighed very quickly after birth, and then the baby goes back skin to skin. Or if it's a not such a busy night and they're going to have time, then the wait would stay and wait until after you have fed your baby, because removing the baby during that 9 stages can mean the baby goes back to the beginning, never makes it back through the whole lot again and goes to sleep and doesn't have that priming feed. And anyone who rears puppies or any animals, horses, cows, etc.
Sheep, they have to get colostrum, don't they?
If you separate mother and baby, it does make life difficult to get feeding off to a good start. So that's why we go on about these 9 stages and making the most
of it. And remember that you can't get that time back.
Yeah.
That first hour is that first hour, and then once you've gone past that first hour, that's the end of it. So you will never get that time back again. And that's hard if you're hearing this and we're talking about it and you didn't get that opportunity. But you can do it as soon as you can afterwards. But that first hour is the golden hour, and that's the one that's really important, that really hits your hormone levels high and produces lots of things for your baby to, transference of bacteria and all the things that your baby needs to prime for when it's born. But you can do it soon as. And
it's when the baby is quiet and alert and ready to feed. It's when the baby expects to be fed. So, it's an opportunity.
They often go to sleep after an hour. They will fall into a very deep sleep for quite some time, and that makes you quite anxious if you haven't fed your baby.
Yeah.
So if you haven't fed your baby in that time, hand express and give it some colostrum, and then you know that you've done that, and then you can do some more hand expressing when your baby's asleep. Every couple of hours do a hand expression session.
So Bethan, go and have a look at the Global Health Media videos. Just do a Google search and it's the breastfeeding in the first hours. It's absolutely
And
gorgeous.
actually, they've got an app. I can't remember what it's called. It's a great app, and you can just have it as an app on your phone if you're so that way inclined. It is called Birth and Beyond, Global Health Media Birth and Beyond, and it looks like that. And it's got all the videos and all the information on that you can have on an app on your phone. So, you know, that's something for you to do if you've got nothing else to do. And you can see the videos and watch them over and over if that's what you'd like to do. It makes access easy.
Okay, we've got thank you from Alexandra for our answer to hers. Right, Sophie has said, her son is 5 weeks old and really struggling with silent reflux and passing wind. Do you have any tips? We've tried the koala position, keeping upright. We can tell where you've been. That's Chippy. That's what they call it. Just trying to get the rest of the message open. Okay. Try the koala position, keeping upright after the feed. Our health visitor said it's due to his body still maturing, that he's in pain, and he's breastfed. So, have we got any suggestions?
I would look at your attachment very carefully
always.
still. It's quite often when you talk about reflux and babies being uncomfortable and squirming a lot with, is he reaching his milestones, is he gaining lots of weight? Because that often goes alongside this refluxy. It could be lactase imbalance. So they're getting lots and lots of breast milk, but they're they're sort of on off the breast, unhappy. You're repeatedly feeding them because they're crying and they've got, tummy ache, and you're giving them more and more milk, and the lactase, which is the enzyme in the tummy, can't break the lactose down, and the byproduct of that is really fizzy, and it makes them really tummy achy and explosive poos and lots and lots of poos, and they're very unhappy, particularly that 4 p.m. till 2 a.m. in the morning, where they're really unhappy, and you're feed. So if that's what you're getting, that might be that it's lactase imbalance, and that you need to just get perhaps a deeper latch, slightly different latch, which will sometimes allow them to get more fat from the breast when they're feeding, and they get a better mix of milk, and they don't get that imbalance of too much lactose, which is all sugar. So they fill up, but it doesn't last long in their tummy. They digest it very quickly, it goes through them quickly, whereas the more fatty milk sits in their tummy for a bit longer, and they can sort of digest it more slowly. So it might be that that's what it is rather than reflux.
Yeah.
Check your positioning. Make sure somebody can watch your positioning to make sure that you're absolutely getting it right, and your baby's not coming on and off all the time and overfeeding, because that leads to all sorts of problems, and it can be resolved.
Okay, good luck with that,
Let us
Sophie.
know.
Yeah. Sarah has said, thank you, that's really helpful. No period of contraception yet, but she has been more wakeful in the night, so maybe it's a growth spurt. I pumped a little to increase supply in the early days, so we'll try that again. I also try the positioning adjustments. Good, well done, thank you, that's great. Bethan's come back, brilliant, thank you for explaining, she said. Stacey has said, with regards to the golden hour, I'm likely having a planned C-section after having an emergency section with my daughter first time around. I remember how difficult it was to hold my daughter whilst laying down, and it wasn't skin to skin, and my first feed was lying down. What can I do or request to start that time with my baby as quickly as possible? If you're having an elective section, which you are, it's a planned section, it's a lot easier. And actually, we do get babies skin to skin much quicker now than we used to. Many babies in theatre are already skin to skin. There'll be a break probably, because it's quite difficult to transfer mum, from the theatre bed to the bed that you'd be on. So your baby might be lifted off you at that point in time, unless you're feeling very clever and can hang on. We are talking about trying to get some slings to help with that. And then you would put your baby back skin to skin. But many babies are put skin to skin nowadays, particularly with elective sections, where it's all fairly calm and unlike your last section.
You still feel quite shaky and faint and sick and cold though, so it is very hard. So I think do what you can and do it as soon as you can. I think that's how we look at it, isn't it?
And partners can play a huge role in this. Goes back to what we were saying about how invaluable a partner is. A partner being there to help you facilitate skin to skin. If you're lying back, the baby's on you, they can help you with that. They can make better steadying a hand on the baby's back, or just keep an eye on the airways and make sure you're both safe. So that can be a really valuable part that a partner can pay. Better than then holding them themselves, really, because that early skin to skin is so important. And as Naomi said, that 1 hour, you can't get it back, and it does need to be you, really, as much as possible within safety remits.
We know that mums that have had cesareans are the ones that tend to have babies that lose the most weight on day 5, because you haven't primed your hormone levels in the same way with early skin to skin. So if you have a nice home birth and normal delivery without any pain relief, which is not a lot of people do that in these days. They have epidurals and they have hospitalised births. We know that the further you are away from normal, that you will produce less milk normally in those early days. So you have to almost make twice as much effort to make that milk. And you have to be on it and do hand expressing. So if you do miss out on skin to skin for any reason, just make sure that if your baby's separated from you for any reason, or is very sleepy and you can't get it to wake up to feed, skin to skin is where it expects to be. But also do some hand expressing. Do it yesterday, don't do it tomorrow. I say that every week. Don't take your foot off the accelerator and do as much hand expressing as you can. All the time, because you will get payback. On day 3 you'll have milk instead of day 5, and your baby won't have lost more than 10% of weight, and you won't have people coming into your house saying we need to weigh your baby all the time. All of you that are listening to that have had that experience, you won't want to do that again. It's really soul destroying. So if you're on it, don't say I'm too tired, I'll do it tomorrow. Do it yesterday. You have to do it, and you have to do that early stimulation in order to prime your prolactin levels, the prolactin ducts in your breast. You have to switch everything on, and it's very time critical. You've only got a few weeks of the window, and the earlier you are doing it, the sooner you are after birth doing it, the more milk you will make. So you have to do it. You have to do it, even if you're tired and you're upset by something, or you just have to make it your priority, because you can't get that time back. It won't come back, and you can't make that milk if you don't. So just set to and get as much help as you can to protect your supply in the early days.
I think the just final things for you, Stacey, is to say that obviously this isn't your first baby. Mothers who are having second babies and subsequent babies often find the milk comes in a bit sooner. They also find it comes in a bit more volumes. So hopefully, because it will be much calmer than an emergency section, your milk will come in sooner and you'll get bigger volumes straight off. But actually you'll find it's a very different experience to last time. But just maximise on the skin to skin as much as you can in those first few hours. Obviously we have to have safety in mind. Yeah. Jenny has said, and I'm not sure I'm going to be able to answer this one, please can you confirm the correct clothing for a 4-month-old to wear in a pram in the warmer weather? Also, when should we start using baby sun cream, please? So I think first, if we go to the sun cream, we wouldn't be putting babies in the sun at all. They would be in the shade anyway, so they shouldn't need baby sun cream at all, because they shouldn't be in full sun. But with regard to the clothing, I always think it's one extra clothing layer to me. Is how I dealt with it.
If you're really hot with a coat on, then your baby will probably be really hot with a coat on, and feel the back of their neck. Put your hand in the back of their neck, but don't overdo it. I think it's a difficult time of year now, because it suddenly gets quite cold, doesn't it? It goes from quite warm in the afternoon to suddenly at 5 o'clock the temperature drops to -5. And this morning at 7:30 I cycled in frost, so my fingers dropped off, and now everyone's outside having a lovely time. So it's very labile temperature, so it's a very tricky time with newborn babies and certainly older babies as well. I think if you're going out, have a parasol or some cover for your baby, but don't put muslins over your baby's cot so that they don't get air in them. So if you've got a pushchair, don't put that over the hood with the hood up, because they need to get air surrounding them, and babies get very hot in there.
It's too hot.
Pram if you do that. So we don't ever want to see muslins or blankets or sheets over your baby in the pram or the pushchair. But keep them in the shade. I'm not sure about when we would suggest that you use factor 50 on babies, because that can make them overheat as well. If their skin can't breathe, they can get very hot if you smother them in lots of high factor cream. But you have to just protect them. But I would say don't put your baby anywhere near the sun. Keep them in the shade all the time.
Yes, they don't need sun cream.
Yeah, but check with your health visitor on that one.
Okay, that was testing us, that one. Katia has said, my baby rarely burps despite spending time trying to burp. He suffers a lot from trapped gas. How can I solve this situation? Anything. I mean, if the baby's breastfed, the likelihood is they haven't got much in the way of wind, because if you think about the breasts, there isn't any air in the breasts. And as long as the baby's feeding well, then the likelihood is that they're not taking air in. So we would suggest having your baby upright for a period of time after the feeds, and just see, but not waiting ages for a burp that's never going to come. If they're uncomfortable, it might be back to what we were talking about with that lactose-lactase slight imbalance, and that means looking at positioning attachment again and making sure that you've got it as good as you can get it. Make sure your baby's got that really asymmetrical attachment, head back, really big mouthful of breast, that you can see the areola above your baby's upper lip, and you can see the double chin at the bottom and less areola. So really making sure that's working, because we know that makes the biggest difference, which is why we talk about it week in and week out. So I think it would be a case of looking at that and not spending much time, waiting for burps that aren't going to come. I think also babies, are quite dramatic. If they're feeling a little bit uncomfortable, they're going to tell you. You might sit there and think, oh, I feel a bit uncomfortable. Whereas your baby is going to tell you about it in no uncertain terms. So I think we've shown it before, but positions where you hold your baby so they're draped over your arm can be really, really beneficial. Putting them, we're going to put them on Naomi's knee. Putting babies on your knee helps as well, putting pressure.
At their bottom. They love being petted.
They love it, and they love pressure on their tummies. Will make them feel a bit better too.
Sometimes walking around like that with them.
Yeah, that's a really good position.
Put your hand around their leg so they don't slip, and they sort of lean over, and your hand is diagonally across their tummy, and they're into your hip, so you can walk about. They don't like being sat down, so stand up and walk about with them like that, and they will fall asleep in your arms.
That was my preferred position with my son, because if I had him the other way around, he'd bit my shoulder.
It's a real midwife position, this. If you're on night duty as a midwife, you'd have one under each arm in the old days when we used to take babies away from mummies. We don't do that anymore, but we used to. And we'd carry them around while the mums were asleep, but obviously we don't encourage that anymore. We like mums and babies to be together. That was back in the old days. So, it sometimes helps though for you to walk about at night with the babies looking, go and show them the dishwasher and the washing machine. They find it very interesting at that time and see how you get on.
Dilek has said her son is 11 weeks now and has silent reflux, and they're taking omeprazole. He's still having difficulty staying on flat, and recently suffering from constipation. Any tips for us? Thank you. Is that going to be the omeprazole causing the constipation?
It could well be. It just might be that, are you giving formula as well?
It doesn't say.
Yeah. I think you probably need to have a conversation with your health visitor about that, and or your GP, just to see how things are going, and how long have they been on the omeprazole for? Do they need to be on it still? Is it helping? And challenge it and see if they still need to have it, but that's on the guidance of your GP. And
she's answered no, so I think no formula.
No formula.
Yeah, she's come back no.
Okay, and they don't always, they don't always poo all the time. Breastfed babies, after 6 weeks, they may poo once a week, twice a week, something like that. But breastfed babies shouldn't be constipated. They shouldn't. Is it a form stool or is it a normal stool when they do it? That's the thing. I think you need to have a conversation with somebody one-to-one, rather than going through in a public forum discussing your situation. But I think just the unhappiness and that reflux, it's a miserable time for you. It's really hard, and it should get better as they start to sit up a bit more. But it may be that it is the omeprazole that's causing it. But I think that you need to have a conversation with your GP or your health visitor about that, and they need to just check and check have a check-in with you and see what's going on. But call them and have a chat with them.
So that was Dilek. I hope that helps. Sophie has said, she's just come back, that we mentioned lactose. I had a lactose intolerance before I was pregnant. Is it possible it could be that? No, it could be very different actually. Your baby needs lactose in a big way. Lactose is the sugar that feeds your baby's brain. It's absolutely crucial for brain development. So your baby does need it. When we talk about lactose and lactase when it comes to babies, it's an imbalance. So your milk is absolutely chock-a-block full of lactose.
Your lactose.
We've got more lactose in our milk as humans than any other mammal, and the reason is that we're growing these amazing brains. So it's really important, but what we find is if a baby isn't going on as well as they can do, they're getting more of that waterier part, which is very full of the lactose, and less of the fattier part, which has got more of the fat in it, obviously, that settles tummies. And they haven't got quite enough lactase to break it down. So it is quite different to what you experienced. And a baby who was truly lactose intolerant would be a very, very unwell baby.
Be in Great Ormond Street.
Yeah, this is
so unusual.
Yeah, this is just an imbalance. And once positioning attachment is rectified, usually it sorts itself out.
I mean, most people don't develop lactose intolerance until they're older, and because we don't tend to, we're the only mammal actually that gives another species of milk beyond weaning. So, all the other mammals don't give milk to their babies after they've been weaned. They give their species-specific milk until they're weaned, maybe that's 18 months, 2 years, and then they don't have any more milk. And, our bodies aren't primed to have any other milk.
In fact, as humans, we don't all have the ability to break down lactose as we get older. Many parts of the world, depending on what's happened, amazingly in the Western world where we tend to drink cow's milk, we've developed the ability to carry on having lactase to break it down. If you go to other parts of the world, they cannot tolerate milk once they're weaned from mother's milk. So once they go off mother's milk at somewhere between the ages of 3 and 8 of the natural weaning ages, believe it or not, once they've gone past that, they actually no longer produce lactase in the way that we in the Western world do, and are unable, and you will find many people in the world, many groups of people in the world, who cannot break down lactose anymore because that lactase is gone, because they're not used to drinking it or having it. So it is quite different.
But very rarely do babies have lactose intolerance because they need that. They absolutely need it in their diet. So it's nothing to do with that. It's just the fact that they're getting a bit too much for the amount of lactase, which is the enzyme. They haven't quite got enough enzyme to break it down in the early days. And once you get the balance of the feeding better, the lactase can deal with what's going in rather than large amounts of lactose, which you're giving if your baby's coming on and off the breast all the time and overstimulating you. So hope that's clear.
So Sophie, hope that's all right. Charlotte says her phone's been playing up, but she's back on listening. Welcome back, Charlotte and Alicia. Jenny says she's in the shade but very fair. Great advice, so thank you. Brilliant, fabulous.
Keep her in the shade.
Dalek said no, we already said that. Dalek says, fully breastfeeding. Well done, Dalek. That's fabulous. We like to hear that.
Well done, you. That's hard work, especially if your baby's unhappy.
Tess has said, it's just jumped. It does that once in a while. Tess has said, do you ever recommend domperidone? It's been recommended to me as a possible option. Baby is 13 weeks. We had a posterior tongue tie cut a few weeks ago, but supply dipped before this due to undiagnosed tongue tie. Baby's dropping percentiles, so we need to start topping up with formula, but wondering if this could help alongside. Well, we do actually, don't we?
All the time,
every
day.
We do talk about domperidone, but we tell you to go and have a look at the Breastfeeding Network's information. So if you do a Google search, Breastfeeding Network, Dr. Wendy Jones, who is a pharmacist who specialises in lactation, has written some amazing resources. Anybody out there who is thinking, can I take this medication, and it doesn't matter what it is, the likelihood is she's written a leaflet about it. And she's written a whole leaflet about domperidone that talks about the side effects of domperidone, why we might want to use it in lactation, and why some GPs might choose not to prescribe it. So it's worth having a look at that and being sure that you really understand what it is and why it's actually off license for the use that we have it for, because we're using it for its side effect. Anything to add to that?
I think that the first thing is look at your attachment, look at pumping, see if you can have a pumping session to see if that helps first. I would say pump for about 4 to 6 days, just to see 8 times in 24 hours, to see if that increases your milk supply without taking any medication, and then have a conversation with your GP. And if you're struggling at that stage, 13 weeks, you said, didn't you? Ask to speak to an enhanced health visitor team with your health visitor. So ring your health visitor up and ask if you can be referred to the enhanced breastfeeding team for health visitors, and see if someone's available to support you a little bit more with infant feeding and with a plan for you. We see babies up to 6 weeks, and then after that the health visitors take over. So if your baby's slightly older, then they should be able to support you breastfeeding and to protect your milk supply. But yeah, some GPs will give it, some won't. And it does work for some mums.
Yeah, as one of our colleagues used to say, it's not a silver bullet. Can't guarantee it'll work for you, but it works for enough mums that it is worth considering.
And you have to look at your early days production. What was that like, and how was your feeding in the first 2 or 3 weeks? Did you make lots of milk then? If you made lots of milk in the early days, you can probably step it up again. If you didn't make enough quite in the early days, it's probably harder to make the supply, but it's always worth trying. Always worth trying.
Okay, so Breastfeeding Network, Tess can have a look at that.
Yeah.
Delec's come back and said thank you. Sophie says thank you so much. I'll get my health visitor to check positioning in his latch. Wonderful, do that. Kathy's come back. Thank you very much for your advice earlier. After the Ello spends some time on the breast, he starts getting. I'm getting completely done by all these today. Little one, I bet. He starts getting really fussy and kicking, but still furiously trying to attach. How should I deal with it? Also, I don't drink or take lactose except for rarely bread with butter. Will that impact on the amount of lactose in my milk? No, it won't. Not really. It doesn't have an impact in that way.
And are you taking lactose for you, not having lactose intake for you, or are you trying to do it for your baby? Because you know, it's probably not it's not the lactose that will affect it. It will be the cow's milk protein if it's anything. But you know, you need those things in your diet unless your baby really can't tolerate them. So we always say take things away for a bit, and after a couple of weeks reintroduce them if it's for your baby. But if it's for you, and that's because you don't take lactose, then obviously don't introduce any.
So I think it's a case of looking at positioning and attachment again, Katya, because very much what happens is the baby knows what they want, and if they're not getting the mouthful they're after, they get a bit grumpy. So the baby's going, well, this isn't quite right, this isn't where I want to be, please can you get me in the right place? We would always start with the lowest thing, and the first thing we will start with positioning and attachment. Then we ramp it up, and if we keep going, then we might end up at something like a cow's milk protein allergy. But that's a long way down the line, and there are lots and lots of other factors that might indicate that, which you haven't mentioned.
It's rarely that.
It's very rare.
It's quite overused as a term, and actually most babies aren't cow's milk protein allergic. But if a paediatrician's seen you, then that's different. But you know, take it with a pinch of salt. You know, just look at the whole picture and get your diagnosis by somebody who knows what it is, rather than just deciding that that's what it is. So
get your positioning attachment checked first, I think, is the first thing to do, because that probably is the most likely reason that your baby's just grown a bit. Sophie says, our son's 12 days old and suffering from trapped wind. I'm sorry I missed the question earlier. Solely breastfeeding, gaining weight well. Milk comes out very fast, so initially takes in quite a lot of air. I lean back as far as possible to slow it down, and once established, he copes better with it. But even though, it jumps up. Even though we burp him, he seems to be suffering more at night with trapped gas. Any advice would be great, thank you. Nights are always the worst. That's when the babies behave the worst.
I think go back to our session a bit earlier and just catch up, because we spent quite a bit of time talking about that, where you know, get your attachment right. Might be that you need to adjust your attachment very slightly so that the flow of your milk he can cope with it. That's the first thing, because it goes down their throat rather than into their mouth if they're not quite deep enough. But also, if you get your attachment right, the flow damps down a bit, so it's not quite so powerful, and then they can deal with that. But also, they don't get this lactase overload, where you know they may be on and off the breast a little bit. So if he's coming off, spluttering, coughing, going back on, coming off, you know, he's not having a really good continuous feed where he drains the breast well and he stimulates you probably a little bit too much in the early part of the feed, and that can sometimes make them a bit gassy. So just double check your attachment. Just make sure that he's on really, really well, and get somebody to support you in your attachment, because you know, go back to where we were before about positioning. We showed some pictures of how to get them on the breast properly, and also look at the videos that we suggested on the Global Media Health, so that you can just see a really good latch to make sure that that's what you're doing, because 99.9% of the time it's poor latch that creates these problems. It's nothing else. So always go back to the basics before you start diagnosing different problems. Go back to the basics, because it's nearly always that's the problem, including trapped wind.
I think we talk about this quite a lot about position. Well, we do talk about position attachment an awful lot, but we know that it's the key to getting breastfeeding off to a good start. And I often tell parents that, you know, I've had 3 of my own, and I actually changed the way I fed my 3rd baby, having fed my others. So there is always room for improvement, always. You know, we will say that to parents when we meet them. They come to clinic, and we, you know, we say to them, the first thing we're going to look at is how your, you know, how the position attachment is, and a millimetre in one direction or another can make an enormous difference to your experience and your baby's experience.
It can be the difference between £1 a week in weight gain
Yeah.
sometimes, you know, it's that profound. So just make sure you're doing it right.
So don't feel offended if you come and see us at clinic for any reason, and you say to us, so many people have watched my positioning and attachment, and we'll go, well, we're going to watch it again if that's all right. So we're taking photographs of people doing it now as well. So we take photographs. If you come and you're with one of us, we'll often take a photograph when you've got it spot on, so you can take it home and have something to look at. And Charlotte's come back on saying she's got any tips for getting Alicia to sleep more. She's eating a lot and drinking a lot, but I want her in a routine.
She doesn't
want to be in a routine.
She wants mummy.
Charlotte, they don't want to be in a routine.
She'll do it when she's 14.
So I learnt a lovely new word yesterday. I sat in on a seminar yesterday about sleep and helping babies to sleep. And there's a word in the Czech language. It was a Czech lady talking. She's doing a PhD, and it's called uspavání, and it means helping your baby to sleep. And in most other countries in the world, there is a word that means this: that we help your you help your baby to sleep, whether it's lying and chatting to them, or stroking their head, or, you know, just being close. And unfortunately, we just don't have that word in English, and maybe that's quite obvious by the way we expect babies to sleep. So if you're lying there, Charlotte, helping your baby to sleep, think you're doing what's called uspavání, which is just so lovely because you're doing the most amazing mothering.
Nice secure baby.
Yeah. So and she won't be in a routine because that's not what babies do to begin with. I know she's nearly 1, but they don't really have routines as such.
She will do it when she's ready.
Yeah. Anyway, she's waving. Alicia's
alongside.
waving at us, so we'll wave at her.
We're well over now, aren't we? How are we
We
doing?
are. We're at 41. So Sophie's come back to say thank you.
Yeah.
So we're going to have a week off next week, and we'll be back in 2 weeks. So we'll see you then.
Get all
Thank
your
you
questions
very,
added
very
up
much.
for us, and we look forward to seeing you in a fortnight.
Thank you very much for all your questions today.
Lovely.
And have a lovely day. It's nice and sunny now.
Get outside in the garden now. Bye from us.
Bye.
Bye.